Tom, how you doing today? Not the smartest guys in the room. We are going to talk about, is the customer always right? Could that be possible? Could somebody always be right? I did want to confirm with you, Tom. Last week I mentioned I think in show and tell, I mentioned at some point, I mentioned hernias on my body. Went to the doctor the other day. He said, I've seen one, I've seen two, I've never seen three. So he says I need to go and get my stomach sewn back together and then fix the hernias too. So that's what we got going on.
Wow. I mean, yeah, how you get, I don't know, like something special going on with Dominick Domasky that you managed to get. Not only did you surprised me when you dropped the 3 hernias thing last week, and I was like, what? And then we didn't get a chance to talk about it afterwards. But like, yeah, you surprised me with that. But I'm like, I feel better about that shock, knowing that you also surprised the doctor. That the doctor was like, I'm sorry, how many? What are you doing? Like, how is this, like, what is happening that's even a possibility? I don't understand. I'm confused. I'm flummoxed. I'm babbling. Like, what? How do you what? I mean, I don't know. Stop doing the breaststroke the way you're doing it or something?
You did not like my breaststroke last week. So I was just telling Tom, I mentioned that the doctor confirmed at least 3 hernias. So we'll move on from that. But yeah, there's some days they're more painful than others. Some days I'm tough, but I blame growing up in my youth, carrying trees around for my dad, and I blame the Pittsburgh food, too many pierogies, too many buttery foods and things like that.
I don't.
I hear a lot of times they say that's from carrying a really big wallet full of cash in your back pocket.
I wish, Brian, that has not happened.
I would love to hear the doctor's reaction to that explanation for the hernias. That's what I want to hear next. Is I want to hear you. I want you to come back and tell us that you shared your theory that you've eaten too many pierogies and carried too many trees, and those 2 things are the main contributing factors to your hernias. And I just want to hear like what his reaction was.
Well, so I did tell him that, and then I also asked him. Sometimes they put in mesh when they fix hernias, and I had one rupture one time. They didn't put mesh in. I have mesh, blah, blah, blah. So now my plan is, I asked the doctor, I said, you think they could do like double mesh and make me like Wolverine, get some like extra abs in there and stuff like that? Imagine how sweet I would look if they just threw a bunch of abs in on top of the mesh that they're putting in.
So you're basically like, you were asking the doctor to do the equivalent of you like go to the grocery store and you buy a watermelon and you ask them to like double bag it. Like, basically that's what you're asking him to do.
You are correct. Why not? Okay, let's get into this. Not the smartest guys in the room. We're going to talk today. Is the customer always right? So some people would say customer's always right. Some people would say that's completely crazy. But we figured we would, I said, Tom, let's get people talking today. Let's get them arguing and things like that, because then we have to do less work and you guys carry the show, which we like. So that's the subject matter that we're going to talk. So Tom came up with, is the customer always right? And that's where, since you came up with it, Tom, we'll start there, and then we'll get to Brian, Heather, John, Jay, Eric, come on up. Dante, how you doing? Debbie, anybody watching live streaming, we appreciate you being here. Come on, Tom, what do you got?
And Dr. Tachi. You can't forget Dr. Tachi.
I didn't say Dr. Tachi.
No,
that was rude of me.
That's all good. I'm sure it was a completely accidental oversight. But yeah. So anyway, getting on to the topic today, is the customer always right? So this is something I was talking about with some other folks yesterday morning, and that's kind of why it was sort of front of mind for me. And one of the things that I kind of love to bring up whenever this subject comes up is the fact that So this idea, this saying, the customer is always right, is actually comes from a quote from a store owner. I think he was like a department store or a fine goods store kind of owner. He was originally British, but then came over to the U.S. And had a store in New York City, I believe, in 1909. His name was Henry Selfridge, and he is credited with coining the term "the customer is always right." But there's more to the phrase. There's more to the saying. There's more to the quote, and everybody always leaves off the second part of that quote, especially customers when they're arguing that they're right about something. And that full quote, the full quote from Henry Selfridge is, "The customer is always right in matters of taste," right? I.e., taste is subjective, and the customer is always right when it comes to their subjective taste, right? So if the customer says, like, if you're in a, you're in a clothing store and the customer says, "I like, red more than blue," and I like, or you're in a restaurant and they say, "I like, I like, or in a pizzeria, I like white pizza versus margarita pizza," right? Like whatever the case may be, the customer is always right in matters of taste, in matters of subjective taste. But when it comes to, and I think we've seen pushback on this kind of in pop culture in the last few years with the rise of the sort of Karen meme online, the customer is not always right. Especially when it comes to how the business should operate. And I think that's the place where it often gets confused, and customers, right, who we now generally refer to these kinds of customers as Karens, insist that their way is the correct way, right? But businesses are, broadly speaking, are kind of getting a little bit more comfortable with pushing back against that and saying, actually, no, that's not how we run our business. This is how we run our business. And if you don't like it, I understand that's your right. You have your right to your opinion, but also you don't have to be here, right? You don't have to patronize this business. You don't have to shop here. You don't have to eat our food. You don't have to whatever. So anyway, I always like to point that out because I think it's something that often gets missed, that the full phrase is, the customer is always right in matters of taste. And I think that's a really important part of the phrase that often gets left off. So that's what we wanted to talk about today. I've got top in my list over here, I've got Brian Swift. Of course, the way things go on my side is vertical versus the grid pattern that Dom has on his side. So I'm just going to go vertical, go to Brian Swift next. Brian, what do you think? Is the customer always right?
Well, I believe in the correct, the entire saying. The customer is always right when it's a matter of taste. I don't think that maybe in the last 75 years or 50 years, we've not taken it that way. We've kind of taken it as you bend to the customer because you need them, which we do need customers. And I think a lot of businesses have kind of gone over the edge of taking too much lip or gruff for the way things are, according to what the customer thinks. And we've bent to them, utilizing the first part of that, the customer is always right. And I think people use that to the point of whatever you can stomach. Some people can't stomach dealing with the Karens and they have no problem. So I agree with the entire principle of when it comes to a matter of taste. Absolutely. I think it's good that at some point it's your business and you at some point have to have a point in which you say, no, you are incorrect, or no, this is the way we've run the business and whatnot. So I would say, no, the customer is not always right unless it involves taste.
Brian, is there a point where you put your foot down sometimes and you say, no, you can't do that. Is there sometimes where you're like, yeah, I guess you can do that. All of a sudden somebody comes to Brian P. Swift and they say, Brian, I want you to coach every week and I'm going to give you 100,000 is there a certain point where it's the opposite, where you're like, I guess I have to accept this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Life's too short. And I think, a lot depends, I guess, what point you are at your life. Because just think about it. What you accept now, you might not have accepted 20 years ago. What you tolerate now, you might not have tolerated 20 years ago, or vice versa. What you tolerate now might have been something that you wouldn't have tolerated 20 years ago because your position in life. So I think sometimes our position in our lives, in our business lives, might change whether you tolerate something or not. And again, I guess it depends on how much you're willing to stomach and swallow. I think is maybe as we get older, that I have found with myself and many people I know, they they will tolerate less, and maybe because that's the state, the point we are in our lives. So, and some people hit that point early, maybe in their 30s and 40s versus 40s and 50s. So I hope that answers your question. I'm complete.
No, appreciate you being here, man. And good luck on the radio today. Hey, so Heather, same question. And now you're leading us down a path here. If the customer is not always right, which I guess that's a broad question. So we're kind of agreeing on that. Where do we draw the line, Heather? What do you think?
Yeah, hi. I am so glad I am in this room today for this conversation, because I literally had somebody tell me I reamed out, well, the customer's always right. And I'm just like, and during that time it was Mercury retrograde. So I was like, now's the time to just shut my mouth. And I just shut my mouth and I took it. But the thing is, the customer is not always right, especially in social media, because everybody thinks because they use social media, they understand social media, and because but I'm just so glad that I now learned the whole entire quote about the customer is always right, but only in good taste, or in taste, or whatever. I absolutely love that. It makes me feel a little bit validated, actually. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Like, yeah, the customer is not always right. Recently there was a restaurant in my state here, and they just posted a viral post about how the customer is not always right, because they had some really, really, really rude and racist customers that were like leaving the servers in tears. And so they had to come to social media and make a statement, because it got so bad that the cops had to be called. And no, the customer is not always right. And that's where you have to take a stand. It's like the paradox of tolerance. And the paradox of tolerance is like, if you're going to be so tolerant to somebody who is so intolerant, then their intolerance is going to wipe you out, because you're so tolerant of their mistreatment that you are going to be so tolerant that you're just walked all over. You're a doormat at that point. So when it draws, you should draw a line when people's feelings are getting hurt. I'm sorry, I'm going to say that, but and when there's friction, and I just think that people need to stand up for themselves a little bit more, because the customer is not always right. And there is a lot of, people feel very entitled these days. And so, that air of entitlement makes it and emboldens the customer to say, yes, I am always right, but they're really not. And I think people should stand up for themselves a little more. So love this. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you, Heather. Good stuff. And that was did you use the term paradox of tolerance? Was that that was quite a phrase?
Yes, the paradox of tolerance. So
Okay.
it's basically, it's like, they coined the phrase, I think, during Nazi Germany, where it's like people became so tolerant of the intolerance that was brought forth during that time that people like it basically they shut up, they didn't speak up, they didn't stand up, and because they were so tolerant that it got wiped out. So it's the paradox of tolerance. Like, are you going to be so intolerant? You're going to be so tolerant to somebody who is and accepting of somebody who is so intolerant of you that they want to destroy you? You're not going to stand up. You're going to be tolerant of that? No. So it's the paradox of tolerance. It's like a whole, go look it up. It's a great read. So yeah, thanks.
Hey, Dom, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's two doctors that are very tolerant.
Got it. Thank you, Brian. Go on, Tom.
I was just gonna say, yeah, it's interesting. I Googled it when Heather mentioned it, because I was like, oh, I don't know that I've heard that term before, but it makes perfect sense, right? And the idea is that, as Heather was saying, that if you are tolerant to intolerance, ultimately intolerance will prevail, right? It will become the prevailing behavior or mindset. I think that's a great point that Heather raised. I think she's dead on. It also made me think of, like, indulging bad behavior, right? Like, you think about it with a kid. If you let a kid get away with bad behavior, they will continue to behave badly, right? If you don't set a boundary for a child, if you don't set a boundary for a kid, if you don't tell them that something is unacceptable, they will continue doing it. If you let your kid draw on the walls in your house, they will continue to draw on the walls in your house, right? If the kid draws on the walls and you let the kid know that that is not acceptable behavior, you make them clean it up, potentially, maybe put them in timeout, whatever, right? But they end up with some form of punishment as a result of it. And they're taught that kind of behavior is not tolerated, right? Is not acceptable. They'll stop doing it. But if you let them do it, they'll just keep doing it. And I think in some cases, this kind of behavior that we're talking about is very similar to the kind of behavior you see from a toddler, right? They throw a tantrum, they do something inappropriate, and if you don't stand up to them and tell them that it's unacceptable, guess what? They'll keep doing it. Surprise, surprise, they'll keep doing it. They'll keep throwing hissy fits. They'll keep making unreasonable demands. They'll keep behaving badly until you teach them where the boundaries are and what behavior is acceptable and appropriate and what behavior isn't. But yeah, I really like that example, Heather, of that idea that you brought up, that you introduced, the paradox of tolerance. I am 100% going to use that one. So thanks for bringing that up. What do you think, Dom?
I think everybody's rolling. I can't wait to hear what people have to say. I have to give you a sidebar because when you come back to me, I can throw a wrench right in things and stop it. So I used to work at a restaurant where you had to wear items of flair. And I was a server at this place where we wore these items of flair. And the manager one time, let's say somebody wanted whatever on their plate. And I went back into the kitchen and I said, we don't have this on the menu. It sounds weird to me. What should we do? The manager said, if the customer wants shit on a plate, that's what we will give them. And they were willing to run over to like a local, the Giant Eagle that was right across the parking lot, and get whatever to make the sale. So it's weird because that was a matter of taste, but it was wrong because on one hand, like, they were going to get junk on a plate that's a representation of them, but it's a matter of taste. So I just thought I would give a weird little sidebar into you. So there you go, Tom.
I mean, I like it. I think the manager was wrong to do that. Personally, I 100% disagree with that. Yeah, but
it's weird because that's taste in a different way, Tom. It was actually the person's taste. So okay, come on, let's go to John. John Jay. This got to get you excited. What do you think, John Jay? Somebody comes to John Jay, they're his client, and they say, John, I want to do it like this. I don't care about your experience. What do you think, John?
A lot of times the answer, if it does not fit my needs or is too much effort, is no. And they can stop being customers. That's the end of story. And there's another great phrase that really relates to this, there is no accounting for taste. The implications, I'm reading what it says, the implication that everyone's personal preference is merely subjective opinion that cannot be right or wrong, so they should never, ever be argued about as if they were questions to be settled by reason or evidence. So for me to try to attack a matter of taste with logic is an exercise in futility on my own. So some people, they're just going to not be customers. That's the end of the story. And life is too short to put up with difficult. I'm going to say it right now. Life is too short to put up with Karens. Whether it be right, partially right, or wrong, unacceptable behavior is unacceptable behavior, and I'm not going to tolerate it. I'm too old for that nonsense. Last thing I'm going to say is I'm going to be a guest on Brian Swift's show on the radio show on WJOL this afternoon. All things inspirational, and I cannot wait. It's going to be a great conversation with a truly inspiring man. So, again, I love the quote, the customer is always right in matters of taste. The customer is not always right, and I tend to lean more towards the employee is the one I need to take care of because they're the ones who service my customers. In that case, it'd be me. So if a customer, a radio station, or an advertiser sponsor becomes too difficult, too demanding, and wants to change things, that's the end of the relationship. End of story.
John, appreciate you, man. I live in that same world where if my mission is share inspiration, share positivity, share smiles, and then if something gets too far away from the mission of my brand, where I think could hurt other people that are part of my brand, where let's say I have other authors like Debbie speaks about domestic abuse awareness. So I don't want to support content that talks about that would support this or be careless in another way. So I'm always focused on the whole rather than one individual that might go off and do something that doesn't represent everybody in a positive light. So, all right, not the smartest guys in the room. Tom, we got all kinds of comments on LinkedIn. You got work to do. Go on.
Yeah. I was gonna say actually, like I am wholly unsurprised by John's answer to that question. I think if there's anything we all know and appreciate about John, he will say it like it is. He is no nonsense, and I had very little doubt in my mind that John was going to say that if people want to, that he has no tolerance for Karens, and that if people want to push back, they can just not be customers inappropriately or make unreasonable requests of him.
May I point out, Tom?
Yes.
That, and John, you can answer. You and Tom, John and Tom have like a bromance lately. Like, like a year ago they didn't agree. Now it's bromance.
And by the way, we figured out what caused your hernias. It was all the flair you wore years ago at the restaurant.
Yeah, probably. So, John, you want to answer about this bromance?
No, I don't. Look, we are like-minded in many ways, and we are able to disagree about certain things, and that's okay. I think the most important thing is we treat each other with a level of respect. We can disagree, but not be disagreeable. And that's something I struggle with. There are times where I want to say not only no, but hell no. And I have to measure what I say. I can't speak for Tom. I don't know there's a bromance. I think people see conflict from time to time, and that's good. That creates engagement. That creates a little drama. But he's got his life, I have my life, and we cross in many things. It's like we overlap in many things, and we disagree wholeheartedly in other things, and that's all right.
Yeah, I agree with John. I think it's I think there's a good level of mutual respect in the way that we treat each other, and I think that's why we're able to kind of have these what I think are useful disagreements, right? Useful discussions on places where we disagree. And also, equally fruitful and useful discussions on things that we agree on. So I think it's because we treat each other with a level of respect, and we keep it civil, right? It never becomes an ad hominem attack. It's never a personal thing. And I think that's sort of crucial to being able to have that kind of discourse where sometimes we vehemently disagree, and both of us have never been shy about saying when we disagree with each other. But again, it's always done respectfully. So yeah, I think that's crucial. To your point, Dom, that you mentioned, and I kind of steamrolled over. Let's get back to that. We have a few comments on LinkedIn. Obviously, this is not the smartest guys in the room. We stream this all over the internet, so we use Clubhouse as the sort of platform to bring this group of amazing people together to be able to speak about the topics that we talk about every week. But we live stream on YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitch. So we have some comments coming in on LinkedIn. We have one from Larry, who's excited about the paradox of tolerance, just like I was. He threw an exclamation point on the end of that one, and said, yeah, some people use fear and other negative incentive tools to force tolerance. But over time, what happens is people normalize negativity and accept it as a part of life. And it's difficult to break out of that cycle. So I think that was a point well made. And then the other comment that we got on LinkedIn was from Curtis, I think over on Dom's page there. And he said, I agree with the idea of setting boundaries, the attention that they get maybe more than the kids have been getting. They may continue just for the attention, and it's crucial how you respond, right? That ultimately that response determines the outcome, I think, is what Curtis was getting at there. So thanks for watching, guys, over on LinkedIn. We appreciate you. Dr. Tachi hopped over on YouTube to give us a view and said, hey. So hey, right back at you, Dr. Tachi. In fact, you are next on my list here as we move down. You're right behind John Jay. So what do you think about the customer is always right? And by the way, to answer your question that you put in the chat on Clubhouse, Henry Selfridge, who's credited with that quote, the customer is always right in matters of taste, is the same Henry Selfridge that founded Selfridges in London. So to answer your question, yes, same guy from Selfridges in the UK. And what do you think about the customer always being right?
Good morning. Nope. I think the customer is right in terms of matters of taste. I never heard the whole thing before, so that's great. And as everybody was saying, taste is so subjective. But the thing is, people think they know, which is interesting. Going back to, I think it was, Heather's comment about social media. Often people are so loud and wrong about matters they know nothing about. The whole thing is you would not have come here, or you would not have enlisted my help if you knew, because you would do it yourself. So I think we've cultivated, and when I say we, I mean societally, we've cultivated a culture where the customer is always right, even on things they know nothing about, because sometimes we're so hungry or in need of whatever they are giving us in exchange. Most of the time it's money, that we are willing to overlook things and say, yes, sir, are you being served? That type of thing. It is needed, because we do need customers, as Brian was saying. We do need people to patronize, but the right people to patronize. And if it's going to be a headache for me, I would rather not have you patronize. That's okay. Get somebody else to do it. Go over there. The other thing is that this is also spilled into other things, that other areas that we don't think of people per se as customers. So how many times have you seen somebody fight to the death over their child in school, knowing good and damn well their child is wrong or not doing what they're supposed to do? But the thought is, because I pay taxes, if it's public school, because I pay taxes, I pay your salary, and therefore you're supposed to do what I say and what I want to my specifications. And if you are not, then you, sir or madam, are wrong. And so we've taken that into other fields as well, away from just the typical customer service type of things. And then finally, I also wanted to say that people sometimes and often take the ability to pay as a license to do whatever the hell they like. So simply because I have the money to pay for these things, I am right, right? So there's this equating of money or having the ability to pay or having a certain status as things should go my way because I have the money to pay or because I am the head of XYZ. Do you know who I am? Do you know who my family is? Frankly, I don't give a damn. So we've cultivated that and we've allowed it to be okay because the rest of us have the need for this money. So sometimes we allow any type of treatment, and it doesn't just affect you. When you allow any type of treatment, say in your restaurant, that means that anywhere this person goes, any other type of restaurant this person goes to, they do the same thing. And now you've affected me because you've allowed it in your restaurant or you've allowed it in your field. So they talk to you that way and treat you that way and want 10 million revisions for free. Now they think that is what happens every time they go to this same type of establishment. So that's what I have to say on that.
A bunch of points, very well made there, Dr. Tachi. I don't really have anything to say other than I 100% agree that there is this idea that you see that, especially with the ability to pay, which is something that I hadn't really thought about in this context. But the idea that for people who have the ability to pay, they also feel that that ability to pay gives them control over what's right. And I think like ultimately when you get down to it, like the ability to pay gives them power, right? Determining power, and that determining power then kind of imbues them with the authority to become the arbiter of right or wrong, or the arbiter of the correct way to do something. It is, especially as a business or a business owner, it's challenging to push back when you've got a paying customer who's making demands and you're like, well, I could do it that way. It's not really the right way to do it. It's going to create some other problems. It's going to make my life slightly more difficult, or the lives of some of my other customers slightly more difficult. I don't know if it's worth it. Sometimes as a business owner, it's difficult to look at that cash, right, sitting on the table metaphorically and say thanks, but no thanks. But I think it's important that we do when those kinds of situations arise, because that kind of behavior really, really should not be reinforced by allowing them to get away with it. So thanks for bringing that up. That's one place that I hadn't really thought about, one context I hadn't really thought about this in, and I think a really, really good point to think about. What do you think, Dom?
Dr. Tachi was on fire. Dr. Tachi, I'm going to clip like 3 minutes of that and send it to you because you were on fire. Use it however you wish, man. I was like, I couldn't hit my likes and hearts fast enough. So well done there. I will say, as a publisher of books, to Dr. Tachi's point, some people just don't know. They don't know the work involved. They don't know how formatting works. They don't know how much time it takes to. So a lot of times people start rewriting at the end of the day, and just when the book's about to go, they decide to add chapters and paragraphs and all this stuff. And then sometimes I hate artificial deadlines, and they'll want to meet some deadline that we never talked about. And all of a sudden, this happens sometimes where somebody might start to treat my staff in a certain way because they are feeling, what do they say? Poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part. So somebody all of a sudden has a fictitious deadline. They want something to happen that can't happen, that we never talked about happening. And then they treat my team a certain way. I'm never going to accept it. So like, you want them to work on Saturday because you expect something to be there by Monday, but you didn't tell us till Friday. And now you're mad because that person's not working on your stuff on Saturday. Why would they be? And for you to expect it, no matter how much money you have, it's not going to happen. And then for you to voice that concern, that, these are the things where like, I'm calm, but you want to enrage me to think that now it's not just me. Now you're going down the road, down the line, and thinking these other people need to respond to your like senseless demands. Wow, that gets me upset. So
May I add one more thing? I'm
go on,
sorry.
Dr. Tachi. You've been all hearts, and Eric even gave you a chili pepper, whatever that means. We're coming to you next, Eric.
I like
Go
chili peppers. Thank you.
Okay.
So to also extending on Heather's point, when it hurt the customer's not right, for example, when it hurt someone's feelings, also when it puts the public in danger. So if you think about the fact of somebody who has gone to a bar and they keep drinking and drinking and drinking, and then the bartender says, "Excuse me, haven't you had enough?" Simply because you can pay and buy out the whole bar does not mean they should serve you till you black out, because it is then a danger to you and then a public danger. So I think that also extends to when there's some sort of risk or danger involved. I rest.
Dr. Tachi, thank you. Now we're to Eric, who gave a chili pepper when Dr. Tachi was talking. So first, I need to explain from Eric what a chili pepper means, and then go on. What are your thoughts, Eric?
I was just feeling like too many flames, so maybe she's just too hot to handle the soup.
Oh, there you go. Good one. Okay, go.
Wear gloves, handle with caution, because and it's funny. So you said two things that make me think that maybe we live in parallel universes. Because when I started in real estate, I used to say, your poor planning does not become my emergency. And then to hear you say it back, I was like, that's a brilliant line. So I'm not sure where we stole it from each other, but we'll keep it as ours. And then working in publishing, I have been pushing this client up a hill. Like, it has been like I should have triple billed, knowing what I know now. And she was like, I love my cover. I love everything. I can't wait to show it to my daughter. 2 a.m. Don't release the book. Don't change. The cover is wrong. My daughter said, I'm like, why did you hire me if you have a daughter that can design covers? How many books is she? And it just was like, reminded me of my mother, who used to be an interior designer. She was like, yes, that will work, but it's going to be hard labor. And do you really want to go that way? It's kind of like, you hired me because I have a skill set and an expertise, and I'm going to allow you to collaborate with me, but I'm not going to allow you to control me, whether that's emotionally, financially, contractually. It's like, no, like, if you want to rewrite the cover, fine. Your book goes to the bottom of the pile until your cover is perfectly designed and meets our standards by your daughter, who feels that she's smarter than us. And when the author heard that, she was like, well, I like my cover. It's just my daughter thinks. And I'm like, big hint. Everybody thinks. It doesn't mean they're right. And so nowadays, I'm just like, look, you can go your way or you can go my way. But if you go your way, I'm not going. So have a nice time. Like, I don't need to get in every fight to prove I'm right. I'm just going to step out. So leave it there. Not quite as brilliant as Dr. Tachi.
I'm with you, Eric. I have similar kinds of things happen in my world in production, and specifically this kind of stuff happens in two places: in pre-production with scripting, and then in post-production with editing. And what will happen inevitably is with some clients, this doesn't happen with everybody, but sometimes with some clients, it will turn into sort of endless rounds of revisions, right? And kind of similar to what you're talking about with the cover, right? Like, all of a sudden there's new rounds of revisions. I thought we were settled on this. I thought we were happy. And now we want to change, because somebody got in their ear and started suggesting things. And the way I usually handle those kinds of clients is very straightforward. In my kind of standard agreement that I use with every client, it specifically says that for post-production services, we include 2 rounds of revisions. 2. That's included in the price. And then in the bottom, it says that the quoted price, right, on the agreement is based on the work described in the agreement, any additional work outside of the scope of this agreement will incur additional cost, which will be discussed with the client if it happens, right? Before any additional work is undertaken. And so essentially what happens is I make my case, right, for why I think we should stay where we are, why I think we're good, or why I think we shouldn't make the change. If the client then chooses to ignore my advice, right, or to disagree with me and say, no, I want to make the change, the next thing I say is, okay, we can do that. Here's what it'll cost, right? Because we're past the 2 rounds of revisions now. We're going into round 3. And now we have to talk about the additional cost because this is not covered in the original scope of work, right? So I try to be very, very clear with clients about that. Like, here's what's included in the original scope of work as we understand it right now. If we go beyond this, it's going to cost more. Sorry, but if you want me to rebuild this, it's going to take more time and that's going to cost more money. And so I just treat it kind of very, I don't get emotional about it. It's just very straightforward. I understand if that's what you want to do, I'm happy to do it for you. Here's what it'll cost. And usually that results in one of 2 things. Either 1, I get more work and I make more money, which is okay, right? Or 2, they turn around and say, thanks, but no thanks. Let's leave it as it is. So yeah, I mean, that's the way I usually deal with clients like that is I try to be very clear about what's included in the scope of work to begin with. And then I just adhere to what we agreed on. I just hold their feet to that agreement. And if they don't like it, it's in black and white and they accepted the agreement and they already said yes. So sorry, no backsies, I guess. I don't say that. That would probably be unprofessional, but it's fun to say. It's fun to think. Sorry, buddy, no backsies. Anyway, what do you think, Dom?
I'm going to steal here for a second. As a publisher, I started doing that about 2 years ago, and you are correct. We'll get to the point where I'm saying I'll just go back to them and say, hey, just so you know, we made 15 changes now. You're at the point where we're going to start billing you per hour per the contract on this, or you agreed, Eric, I sent you a message on Instagram about this. This one drives me nuts. Somebody will agree on the cover. Me and Eric are living parallel lives. Somebody agrees on the cover. They love the cover. They want the cover. This is the cover they decided on. Yes, 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 the whole way through. And then all of a sudden they'll be like, I talked to my daughter and she thinks the cover should be a picture of me. What? We never spoke about that the whole time. So you are absolutely getting billed because you said yes, yes, yes. We revised it. You agreed. And now, so Eric, parallel lives. What are your thoughts on that?
The sad part is it was the daughter that threw them. And the funny thing, and sometimes you just have to take a walk because the daughter's like, I don't think it reflects your story. And I said, did you send her the galley cut? How did she read the book? She goes, no, she hasn't read it. And I'm like, oh. So it's an unsubstantiated comment that you're chasing down the rabbit hole. And the worst part is this is a client that gives away power to everybody in the room. And so this has been like the 5th time. And finally, I just said, look, you do what you want. I'll hear when you're done. We'll put you back on the list. At some point, you got to pay the price for trying to be right all the time, Miss Customer. And this may be the one time. So, yes, Dominick, you and I will probably just call each other in the middle of the afternoon, clink glasses, and move through the rest of the day.
I feel like it might be too on the nose, Eric, but can you please tell me that the story is about her giving away power?
No, that's the irony. The irony is the whole book is about her learning to reclaim her voice and her power. And I'm just sitting there as she's telling me this thinking, did we not just write 53,000 words on finding your voice, claiming your voice, owning your voice, protecting your I'm feeling like maybe you should go back and read your own book before you make this decision.
You know what? That's almost better. That's almost better. I feel like you could absolutely just turn around and be like, you know what? Whatever decision you want to make is fine by me. It's your story. It's your book. But here's my suggestion. Just go ahead and reread it real quick and then tell me what you want to do. Right? I mean, yeah, it's almost better. The irony is almost better than it being on the nose. But yeah, oh man, what a wild roller coaster that is. Dom, it is 10:17. It is show and tell. Are you ready for show and tell? Should we go to Jason first, or?
Well, let's not rush Jason. I got a show and tell right over here.
Okay,
we'll
you got
give Jason,
one. Okay, cool.
I got his. Okay, so I will start telling his show and tell. So, John Jay, when I met John Jay in person, John said he gave me the best compliment. He said, "You're bigger than I expected." So that, John, thank you. I will live like I was. Jim, my buddy Jim Ajay down there, his brother came home from California the other day, and he said something about my hair, and I was like, damn, the only thing left was if somebody said I was tanner. So here is today's show and tell. I don't talk about this much, but I'm super proud. I played college basketball. I played at Pitt Greensburg, a branch campus of Pitt Greensburg. So today I'm pulling out my jersey that my buddy bought for me, Pitt Greensburg jersey. And I was never, this is the story I want to tell you. I was never the best player. I was never the purest shooter. I was never the most athletic person. I felt all those, but I played hard. I gave it my best, and probably a lot of the hernias and body things that are happening to me today are because of that. But I'm proud looking back that I did give it my all. I know when I went out and played at that level, I gave it everything I had. And that's all you can do in a lot of ways. You might not be the most talented, you might not be able to jump the highest, but at the end of the day, if you know you gave it your best, and for the 2 years that I played, that's what I did. I gave it my best. And so 30 years later, I can be proud. And I see, like, I go watch games and I see people like dunking and jumping and all these things that I was not able to do. And I'm like, damn, I was able to compete for a while. So Tom, number 13, that's my show and tell. And I picked number 13 because in life, you make your own luck. So I was never afraid to wear number 13. There you go, brother.
Nice. I like it. It's one of those things I kind of like. I wanted to play lacrosse in college. And unfortunately, I ended up getting a knee injury my senior year in high school playing football, and then which led to a knee surgery in the spring of my senior year, which meant that I missed my senior season, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't end up playing any sports, and I ended up kind of out of athletics for 20 years, basically, until I kind of started getting back into things right before I turned 40. And now I'm a lunatic and I do Ironman races like a crazy person. But yeah, no, I very much appreciate that. And I think it is one of those things that, there are always times where things outside of your control, contribute to your performance. Right. And so like, I look at it from kind of through the lens that I see things in terms of endurance sports. And like, sometimes you go out for a race and the weather plays a role, right? Sometimes you go out for a race and you just have an off day, your stomach is off, right? Like things that you can't, even though you haven't changed, your diet or anything like that, things that you can't really control. Like we have better days than others, right? Some days are better than others. But I think the important thing that I always try to do is, regardless of the circumstances, is try to do the best I can in that moment. Right. And I think that's the key part of that, kind of similar to talking about is the customer is always right in matters of taste, is I try to do the best I can in that moment, right? On that day, on that course, is that the best performance that I can deliver? Kind of similar to what you're talking about on the basketball court, like doing the best you could with the tools you had available in that moment, on that court, in that game, against that team, whatever the case may be, that ultimately you can always go home with your head held high if you leave it all on the court. And it sounds like that's what you did. Maybe that has something to do with your hernias. I don't know. Maybe you left it all on the court, and now you're paying for it, and it has nothing to do with pierogies. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just guessing it might not.
Hey, well, truth be told, they started way back there. I'm already a 3-time loser, so come on. All right, not the smartest guys in the room. Is the customer always right? We determine they're not always right. Jason, what's your take on it, man? Is there a limit? Is there a point where you say no, I'm out of here, or or do you say no, I need the bucks, I'm staying, or what are your thoughts?
I served probably about 15 years in restaurant, hotel, bar, and wine stewarding. And one thing I will say about the customer's always right is I think one of the great managers I got to work with in the Wani Hotel in Yosemite says, they may be a customer, but what you don't realize is you're offering the custom experience of provision. And if it doesn't meet their matters of their minds, we understand. We're not to have an opinion of their minds. We're just here to offer the experience. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. So when you feel something like that they're doing something wrong, are you harmed or inconvenienced? And that would always keep me in check. And it's like, you make money based on the custom experience and level of experience and expertise you offer. So if you really think about, is the customer always right? It's a metaphorical question to stump you, but also to make you think, like, what is the purpose and role that you serve? And I was really enjoying what Eric was saying about, the design cover. Like, in my picture right now is design that Brandon made for me. Now, we've went through a couple different revisions, but the number one question he asked when we're designing my brand is that he says, what is the future state of mind? Like, he got to know me like maybe a month or two before I even, hired him. And one thing that helps that relationship is the familiarity. So how do you relate that to a customer? What are you familiar with? What are the signs that they're giving you? And what are they here for? If they're there a first time experience and they don't know, this is an opportunity to shine. And will they come back? I don't know. It really depends on their opinion. And, restaurants right now are hurting because people are not coming in. And so things are more critical, but the experience is the ultimate reward, that they leave with a smile. And people don't even say most of the time when they leave a restaurant, oh, that was a great experience. But they will leave with a comment if they're pissed off, right? That's the last thing. And I remember even talking to the last manager in a restaurant. I was, that's a great experience. And he goes, man, thank you so much. Because usually most of the time I'm on pins and needles and people complain and they think they have a right to everything, but I'm glad. And I said, I will come back and I'll make sure that I come back and I'll talk to you again. So it's like, where's your manners? Where's your impression? What is the custom experience that you want versus what is the customer experience that you can provide? It's a difficult question, but just remember, opinions are options. And sometimes those options mean more in the moment than they do down the road. So that's my response.
Jason, thanks, brother. I like that. The thought of the experience. That's a unique twist on what we're talking about today. So thanks, brother. And Jason, I'm checking you out on TikTok, liking the videos. Your consistency's up. Anybody like John J, Dr. Tachi, Brian, Tom, Debbie, you put out the consistency, people are going to see it. If you aren't there, I can't watch. So there's times when, if like each of you are putting out content, you are there. I'm able to see it. If you're not there, the world can't find you. So I always live, sorry for the sidebar, but I always live in this world where if a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? So I want my authors, people I work with, people I support, I just want them to be in everywhere they can. So when people are looking for that kind of content, that they are able to be found. Okay, so here is the question for Debbie. Coming your way, Debbie. How do you deal with customer client who thinks they are always right? No matter what you do, they think they're always right. What's your answer, Debbie? That's a hard one.
And never mind. Usually is a challenge, right?
Debbie, you're going in and out. Your mic is in, your mic is out. No, shut it off and turn it back on real quick.
It's, you know, I don't even think it's the mic. It sounds like service.
Okay.
It sounds like a service issue. So I don't know if Debbie's got like spotty service or something. Try it again, Debbie.
No.
I think I hear you. Go on.
So big question.
Debbie, we're gonna shut it off. Debbie, we miss you. We love you. You're the best. She's moving across the country right now, and so she's probably in who knows where Debbie's at right now. Anyway, Tom,
on the road somewhere in a
like
sparsely cellular serviced area of the country. It sounds like
on the road again. Yeah, what a good song. Okay, all right. Not the smartest guys in the room. We're nearing that time of day, Tom, where
I mean, not near, and I think we're there.
Okay, so let's give me a show business. Teach us something about show business real quick. I understand cold opens where they just start, they're into a subject. Are there cold closes?
Well, so the cold open is kind of where you set up, right? Like you kind of give all of the establishing information and context to the audience that they need so that the opening scene kind of makes sense or the plot of the episode makes sense, right? So the cold open is often used, the term cold open is often used interchangeably with another term called the pre-title tease, right? And the pre-title tease is sort of the segment that happens of a show before the opening credits that kind of set up the plot of that episode, right? So that is used at the beginning of an episode to kind of like basically to just kind of ground the viewer or the audience geographically in the story, right? If you think about like, you know, if you just started describing everything around you and the person said like, you know, to somebody on the other end of a phone, they go, hold on, where are you? Right. But if you start with, I'm standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon and here's what I see. All of a sudden they're like, okay, now this all makes sense. I get it. I get what you're talking about. Striations in rock and the red color and the water flowing through the bottom. Like, you know what I mean? Like now all of a sudden this makes sense. But if you say that without that context, without geographically establishing for the audience what's going on and where you are and what they're looking at, it doesn't make any sense. So that's really important to do at the beginning of a story, right? At the beginning of an episode of a television series. There isn't really an equivalent to do at the end because you know the geography by the end of the story, right? So from a series perspective, I think the closest thing that you could get to what you're talking about would be ending on a cliffhanger, right? And we've all heard of that term before, right? Ending on a cliffhanger. And the idea there is you want to leave the audience wanting more, right? You want to leave the audience always wanting to know what happens next. So I think we've pretty well, beaten the horse of is the customer always right? I think we can all pretty much agree that the full context of that quote really matters, that understanding that the customer is always right in matters of taste is an important distinction, a really important part of that saying. And you know, that basically, yeah, you can be right when it comes to a matter of subjective taste, because that's your opinion, right? And it's not a fact. It can't be argued as a fact. So that's that's where I think we all have landed and agreed. I think we've actually had a pretty strong consensus throughout the room today that no, the customer is not always right. Period. End of story. customers are often wrong, especially when it comes to how you should run your business. So just remember that full phrase. And then to your question, Dom, I think to end on a cliffhanger, why don't we talk about next week? We'll talk about podcast sponsorship deals. Maybe that's something we can talk about. But also, we can look forward to hearing an update on whether or not you're double meshing yourself. So there's something we can all look forward to. We can also check in to see how tan you are next week, right? We can check in to see how lustrous your hair looks. We can check in to see if you are bigger in person than we expect you to be. And we can check in to see what the topic of conversation is next week on Not the Smartest Guys in the Room. That's all I got for today. Thank you all for being here so much. We really appreciate you guys. We love you guys. You guys are the reason why we do this show. So thanks once again for being here. We will see you guys next week at 9:30 a.m. Eastern on Not the Smartest Guys in the Room. Until then, I'm Tom for Dom. Have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.